The first scream didn't sound human. It came from somewhere above them, high on the icy ridge carried by the wind like a wounded animal. In the Apennines, sound twisted itself through stone and pine. It echoed wrong, lied easily, and vanished just as quickly. But the men of the Devil's Brigade knew one thing instantly. It wasn't the wind. Snow sagged under their boots as they halted in the darkness, breath rising in pale clouds. The moon was hidden behind shifting fog, turning the mountains into silhouettes of jagged teeth. Sergeant Cole lifted a gloved fist and the patrol froze at once, rifles tilted upward, fingers tightened around triggers. Nobody spoke. Another scream, cut short this time. Then silence. Cole's jaw tightened. "That's one of ours?" They had been tracking the missing Allied patrol for hours, following thin clues, a dropped glove stiff with ice, a faint blood trail half buried in snow, a set of boot prints dragged into the tree line. Every sign pointed higher and deeper into terrain built for death. The Germans had fortified these ridges for months. Snipers, tripwires, camouflage pits, unseen machine gun nests. The Devil's Brigade was used to darkness, to cliffs, to missions no sane unit took. But even they felt something wrong here, something watching them. Private Rourke whispered, "Sir, if that's Muller's squad up there." "It is," Cole answered quietly. "Move." They climbed. The slope was brutal, angled like a wall. Snow broke away in small avalanches under their weight. Ice cracked beneath their crampons. Somewhere above, pine branches snapped, too cleanly to be an animal. A warning. Cole raised two fingers, spread out. The patrol fanned into a loose V shape, each man scanning the shadows between the trees. Their breath sounded too loud in their ears. The fog thickened until the world shrank to a few yards of visibility. Then, a flash. One single muzzle burst from above, silent for a heartbeat, then echoed across the mountains. A second burst followed, and a third. The night lit up like lightning trapped under snow. "Down!" Cole shouted. Bullets kicked up white plumes around them. Men dove behind rocks, behind trees, into the snow. Rourke slid behind a boulder just as a round snapped past his helmet. But the gunfire wasn't aimed to kill, it was aimed to herd. Cole realized it instantly. "They're pushing us left, into something." A trap, a classic German mountain tactic. He scanned the tree line and felt his stomach drop. There, half visible in the fog, was a narrow ravine with jagged stone walls and a sheer drop at the far end. If the brigade moved blindly into it, they wouldn't come out. Before he could signal a retreat, a figure stumbled out of the fog ahead. A man, bareheaded, coat torn open, collapsing to his knees. One of Miller's patrol. The soldier's mouth opened, desperate to speak, but only a ragged whisper escaped. Cole sprinted to him and grabbed his shoulders. "What happened? Where's the rest of your squad?" The man's eyes were wide with terror. His teeth chattered uncontrollably. They took them, alive. They're using the cliffs, as cages." His head dropped, his body went limp. Gunfire roared again, closer this time. Cole rose to his feet, breath freezing on his scarf. "This isn't a rescue anymore," he said quietly. "It's a race." Fog shifted above them. Shadows moved. More screams echoed, farther now, deeper into the mountains. The Devil's Brigade tightened their grips on their rifles and pushed forward into the darkness. The hunt had begun. The dead soldier's body was still warm. That meant the Germans hadn't taken the others long ago. Maybe an hour, maybe less. In mountains like these, time wasn't measured in minutes. It was measured in how long a man could survive the cold, the wounds, or the enemy's imagination. Cole stood up slowly, scanning the darkness above the tree line. Snow drifted down in soft flakes, but the air felt tense, crowded, full of eyes. The Apennines had a way of swallowing sound, but tonight they gave everything back. Snaps of branches, distant echoes, muffled footsteps that might have been men or might have been ghosts. "Check him," Cole ordered. Rourke knelt beside the fallen patrolman and pulled open the torn coat. 4 deep bruises around the ribs, rope burns around the wrists, mud packed into the boots, not Italian mud, but mountain clay from higher slopes. "They dragged him," Rourke whispered. "Fast." Then something else caught his eye, a patch of gray dust on the man's shoulder. Fine. Powdery, not snow. Cole rubbed it between his fingers and felt the grit grind like crushed stone. "Limestone," he muttered. The ravine. The Germans were using the cliffs for holding points, natural cages, places where echoes hid screams and where the cold did most of the killing. One of the men in the back whispered, "Why take them alive?" Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. The brigade knew the Germans had been interrogating captured scouts for weeks, trying to map Allied winter movements before the spring offensive. A patrol going missing wasn't unusual, but this felt prepared, calculated, almost theatrical. The wind shifted, and with it came a thin metallic sound. A clink, then another, steady, rhythmic, chains. Cole lifted his fist. Halt. The brigade dropped into cover as a new kind of silence settled across the slope, the kind that existed only when someone else was holding their breath too. The moon finally cut through the fog for a moment, revealing a faint trail leading upward. Snow was disturbed in a straight line, footprints alternating with drag marks. The path snaked between boulders, turned sharply, and disappeared behind a jagged outcrop. Cole signaled forward. They advanced slowly, stepping into the broken tracks. Every footfall was deliberate, controlled. Frost cracked beneath their soles, loud enough to make hearts stutter. Halfway up the incline, a shape appeared on the trail, a boot, standing upright. But there was no foot inside. Rourke's jaw tightened. "They're leaving markers." Not for the brigade, for fear. The path narrowed until it pressed them against the mountainside. Fog curled around them. The temperature dropped sharply, and then they found the first cage, a natural pocket in the rock, closed by a crude lattice of wire and sticks. Inside, 2 soldiers sat slumped against the wall, their hands bound, frost growing in their eyebrows. One lifted his head weakly. Don't follow them," he whispered. Cole cut the bindings, pulling the men out one by one. Their bodies were shaking uncontrollably. "What happened?" Cole asked, lowering his voice. "They moved us all night," the soldier rasped. "From cliff to cliff. They're hunting you." Cole felt the cold deeper now, not from the air, but from the truth settling in. This wasn't a rescue mission gone bad. It was a lure. A German mountain unit, specialists in winter warfare, had set this up. They wanted the Devil's Brigade to come. They knew the brigade's reputation, their aggression, their willingness to dive into impossible missions. Rourke's voice cracked the silence. "Sergeant, we're the target." Before Cole could respond, a flare streaked across the sky above them, bright red, hissing through the mist like a burning omen. Another scream followed it, higher, farther, still alive. The Germans were moving their prisoners again. Cole adjusted his grip on his rifle. "On your feet," he said. "We don't stop. Not until we get them all back, or die trying." The brigade tightened formation, lifted their chins against the cold, and pressed deeper into the mountains where the enemy waited, watching them approach. One mistake up here and the Apennines wouldn't give their bodies back. Snow muted everything. Steps, breath, fear, until the mountains seemed empty. But Cole knew better. The Germans were out there, somewhere in the fog, shaping the night like sculptors. The brigade moved carefully along the ridge, following the flare's fading glow. Every few seconds the wind shifted, carrying the faint metallic clink of gear from somewhere above. Rourke whispered, "They're not running. They're waiting." Cole lifted a fist. "Halt." A snap echoed across the slope. Not a branch, not an animal, a deliberate shift of weight on stone. Then the rifle shot came, a single crack from high above. Bark exploded beside Cole's head. Another shot followed from a different angle, then a third. 3 snipers, 3 elevations, perfect triangulation. "Cover!" Cole shouted. The brigade scattered behind pines and broken rocks. Snow kicked up in white bursts as bullets carved lines through the ridge. These weren't random shots. These were Alpine marksmen, Gebirgsjäger, trained to kill from impossible positions. "They're not trying to hit us," Rourke hissed. "They're pushing us somewhere." Cole saw it instantly. Each sniper burst drove them toward a narrow chute between 2 boulders, a natural funnel, a death trap. "Smoke!" Cole ordered. 2 men cracked cylinders and thick white clouds rolled across the ridge. Fog swallowed smoke, turning the world into blinding white static. The sniper fire stopped at once. Silence fell again, unnatural, waiting. Cole waved them back from the chute. The brigade moved low, slipping behind a fallen pine. The smoke thinned enough to reveal shifting shadows above. Rourke leaned close. "Sergeant, where'd they go?" A soft thud answered him. From above. Cole's blood iced. He scanned upward. Through the veils of fog, he saw the first silhouette, flat against a cliff, wrapped in white canvas, almost invisible. Then a second, then a third. They were descending the mountain, switching from rifles to knives for close-quarter kills. "They're coming down!" Cole shouted. The brigade opened fire. Muzzle flashes tore through the fog, lighting the ridge in stuttering bursts. A German dropped from a ledge not 10 feet from Rourke. The man lunged with a knife. Rourke slammed his rifle stock into the attacker's jaw and fired once into his chest. Another shape appeared behind Cole. He spun and shot, watching the sniper fall backward into darkness. But the Germans kept pressing, herding the brigade uphill, step by step, forcing them toward something. Then it came, the scream. High, human, close. One of the captured patrolmen, alive. It carried through the trees, cutting through fog, then ended abruptly, as if someone had clamped a hand over the man's mouth. Cole felt his stomach twist. "They're showing us the way," he muttered. "They want us climbing." Rourke swallowed. "Sergeant, this whole mountain is a trap." Cole tightened his grip on his rifle. "Then we fight our way through it." He rose from cover, signaling the advance. The brigade surged uphill through snow and shadow, chasing a voice the mountains had nearly swallowed whole. If the Germans wanted them to follow, then they'd follow, but not quietly. The higher they climbed, the thinner the world became. Trees shrank into twisted silhouettes, branches rattling softly like bones in the wind. The fog thickened into a pale wall, swallowing depth, shrinking distance. Even footsteps sounded wrong, closer, flatter, as if the mountain were absorbing the noise. Cole raised a hand. The brigade stopped along a narrow ridge barely wide enough for 2 men. On the left, a steep drop into black nothingness. On the right, a jagged wall of limestone that rose like a frozen wave. Somewhere ahead, buried in fog, another scream flickered into existence, short, strained, quickly silenced. Rourke whispered, "They're moving him again." "No," Cole replied. "They're staging him. They want us to hear him, just not reach him." A single gunshot cracked from above, not at them, into the air, a signal. The fog carried the echo in strange, broken patterns. It came from ahead, then behind, then nowhere. The Germans were using the terrain to disorient them. Cole pressed forward. They reached a bend in the ridge where the trail widened into a shallow shelf of rock. Something dark lay at the far end. Rourke hurried forward, then slowed. "Sergeant, you need to see this." Cole approached. A helmet, American, frozen into the snow. Beside it, a rifle snapped cleanly in half, not by a bullet, By force. A warning. Cole exhaled slowly. They're taunting us now. Before they could move, a stone clattered from above. Cole looked up just in time to see a figure drop from a ledge. A German mountain soldier, knife out, silent as a falling shadow. Cole dodged aside as the man slammed into the snow where he'd stood. The German twisted instantly, already climbing to his feet, but a Marine tackled him, the two rolling dangerously close to the cliff's edge. "Get him off! Off the ridge!" Cole barked. The Marine shoved the attacker hard. The German slipped, boots scraping rock, fingers clawing for purchase, then vanished into the void below. No scream, just silence. More stones rattled. Cole snapped his rifle up. "Eyes high, they're above us!" Silhouettes shifted on the ridgeline. 2, maybe 3 Germans, ghost-like behind the fog. They weren't attacking. They were moving with purpose, guiding them towards something deeper on the slope. A trap, another one. But ahead, another sound rolled through the fog. Not a scream this time. A voice, weak, trembling. English. "Help! Here!" The brigade surged forward onto a narrow tongue of rock leading toward the voice. Cole held up a hand to slow them, but he was too late. A rope snapped overhead. A German soldier dropped from a branch and hurled a flare into the snow between them. It burst in a violent white glare, blinding them for a heartbeat. Shadows danced wildly. Figures moved above them, switching positions, tightening a ring around the ridge. Cole blinked away the flash and saw it. A small, natural pit, half covered by branches. Inside, a man, tied, shivering, barely conscious. One of Miller's patrol. "Go!" Cole shouted. 2 Marines sprinted toward the pit. As they reached it, another shot cracked from above. Snow kicked off the edge, centimeters from slicing their legs out. The Germans weren't aiming to kill, they were aiming to delay. Cole fired upward, sending sparks from rock faces. "Get him out!" The Marines dragged the man from the pit. His wrists were raw, his lips blue. He whispered, They moved the others across the ridge." "Where?" Cole snapped. The man lifted a trembling hand toward a narrow path carved into the rock high above them. A path almost invisible unless you knew where to look. "There," he breathed. "They took them. There." Another shot echoed. Closer. Cole grabbed the rescued man by the collar and pulled him behind cover. "Rourke, take him back down to the lower line. The rest of you, on me." Rourke hesitated. "Sergeant, go." Rourke obeyed. Cole turned toward the hidden path, the one the Germans clearly wanted them to take. Fog crawled over it like a living thing. He lifted his rifle. "All right," he muttered. "If that's where they want us, then that's where we're going." And the Devil's Brigade climbed toward the ridge where the missing men waited, or where death waited in their place. The hidden path was barely a path at all. It clung to the mountainside like a scar, a slanted strip of ice and broken rock no wider than a boot, with a sheer drop yawning below. Fog rolled across it in slow pulses, opening and closing windows of visibility like a lung breathing in the dark. Cole stepped onto it first. The cliff pressed against his left shoulder. Nothing but empty air lay on his right. The others followed in single file, each man keeping one hand on the rock wall as they edged forward. Snow crunched, soft, brittle, fragile. Every sound felt amplified in the thin cold. Halfway across, they found the first body. An American, frozen in a seated position, back propped against the cliff. His eyes were open, glassy. His rifle hung loosely from numb fingers. Rourke pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck and pulled them away slowly. "Hours," he whispered. "No more than that." Cole studied the body. No bullet wounds, no blood, just cold. "Left here to freeze," he said quietly, "to scare us." A gust of wind blew fog aside, revealing the valley below, black, bottomless. Another step would send someone falling forever. Cole motioned them onward. The path bent sharply, curling around a rock outcropping. As Cole rounded it, a thin string snapped across his chest. He froze. A tripwire. "Easy," he whispered, gently lowering his weight back. He followed the wire with his eyes until he saw the device wedged under a ledge, an old German S-mine, modified with stones to angle its blast downward. If he had leaned forward another inch, the entire brigade would have been bombarded off the cliff. Cole cut the wire carefully and tucked it aside. They want panic. Stay focused. The men nodded, breath visible in nervous bursts. A faint voice drifted through the fog. "Help! Please, someone!" Another prisoner, alive. Cole pushed forward faster but cautiously. The path widened slightly ahead into a flat shelf of rock, and on that shelf, they saw movement. A man on his knees, hands bound behind his back, head slumped forward. A crude sign was stuck into the snow beside him, made from a snapped pine branch. Carved into it, in rough English, "Come alone." Rourke whispered, "It's a trap." "I know," Cole said. He raised a clenched fist, signaling the brigade to spread and take cover positions around the shelf's perimeter. But before they could move into position, a rock slid above them. A shadow shifted. Then a German soldier dropped from a higher ledge, landing silently behind the bound man. A knife glinted in his hand. He pressed it to the prisoner's throat. Cole's heart froze. "Don't!" he shouted. The German smiled faintly, cold, expressionless, and lifted his free hand in a gesture that clearly meant, "Come forward, alone, or he dies." Cole lowered his rifle, stepping onto the open shelf. Rourke hissed under his breath, "Sergeant, what are you doing?" "What he expects," Cole whispered. He kept walking, boots sinking into the thin snow. The German watched him with a predator's stillness. The prisoner trembled, trying to speak, unable to form words. When Cole was 10 feet away, the German spoke in accented English. "You are the ones they call the Devil's Brigade." Cole didn't answer. "You fight like wolves," the German continued. "I want to see if your reputation is earned before you freeze in these mountains." The German pulled the prisoner's head back. Cole lunged. The German slashed, too slow. Cole slammed his shoulder into him, driving him hard into the rock wall. The blade skittered across stone. The prisoner collapsed to the ground. More shadows erupted from above. 2 German soldiers descending ropes, knives drawn. "Contact!" Cole roared. The brigade stormed the shelf in a flash of muzzle fire and shouts. Snow exploded in white plumes. Knives clashed against rifle stocks. A German swung from a rope toward Cole, but Cole fired once, point blank, sending the attacker crashing into the cliffside. Within seconds, the Germans were down. The mountain fell silent again, except for the prisoner's ragged breathing. Cole knelt beside him. "Where are the rest?" The man's cracked lips trembled. They took them to the summit ridge." Cole looked upward, toward a line of jagged rock barely visible through the fog. The highest point before the mountain turned deadly. "Get ready," Cole said. "This ends up there." And the Devil's Brigade began their final climb. The climb to the summit ridge felt endless. The mountain rose in vicious angles, as though shaped to break anyone foolish enough to challenge it. Wind scraped ice along the rocks, cutting at exposed skin with the sharpness of glass. The fog thinned just enough for them to see the steep incline ahead, narrow, cruel, unforgiving. Cole led the ascent, boots kicking into frozen stone, breath steady despite the altitude. Behind him, the brigade climbed in a silent, disciplined line. No one wasted air speaking. Up here, even words felt heavy. Halfway up, they found ropes, thick, taut, tied to iron spikes hammered into the stone, German ropes. "This is how they moved the prisoners," Rourke muttered. "Or how they want us to move," Cole replied. The brigade climbed anyway. As they neared the ridge, the terrain shifted abruptly. The rock flattened into a narrow plateau no larger than a small room, open to the sky, flanked by cliffs on both sides. Snow drifted across it in slow spirals. The silence was too complete. Cole stepped onto the plateau, scanning every crack, every shadow. That's when he saw it. Boot prints, American, fresh. But they didn't continue toward the ridge. They circled, stopped, turned back on themselves. Forced movement. "Sergeant," Rourke whispered, pointing. A length of rope lay half buried in the snow. At the end of it, blood, frozen into the fibers like rust. "They dragged them across this shelf," Cole said quietly. "And then?" Rourke asked. Cole looked toward the far side of the plateau, another narrow passage leading upward between two jagged spires. Beyond it, the summit ridge disappeared into a wall of cloud. They took them through there. The brigade moved cautiously toward the pass. Then the snow beside Cole shifted. Not wind, not settling powder. Pressure. "Stop!" Cole froze just as his boot brushed the edge of a shallow indentation, almost invisible. He knelt slowly. Beneath a thin sheet of snow lay a metal disc with teeth around its rim. A mine, pressure plate, German S-mine, adapted for mountain terrain. He exhaled. They mined the whole approach. The men spread out, scanning the ground. One by one, they found more. Subtle depressions, concealed plates, wire triggers stretched like spider silk. This wasn't a defensive field. It was a maze. Cole marked the safe spots. "Step exactly where I step. No deviations." They moved in single file, weaving between mines with surgical precision. One wrong shift of weight, and the entire plateau would erupt in steel and fire. When they reached the narrow pass, Cole spotted a dark shape ahead, snow-laden, slumped, unmoving, another American soldier. They approached slowly. His hands were bound. His face was pale, turned toward the sky. Frost clung to his eyelashes, but his chest rose, barely, alive. Cole knelt beside him. "Hey, you're safe now. Where are the others?" The soldier's cracked lips trembled. His voice was almost too faint to hear. "They took them higher, almost summit," Rourke asked softly. "How many Germans up there?" The soldier swallowed painfully. "Not many, but they're not regulars. They're hunters." A cold ripple passed through the brigade. Then the soldier grabbed Cole's sleeve with sudden strength. "Sergeant, don't go up the center path. That's what they want." Cole leaned closer. "Then where?" The man lifted a shaking finger toward a thin crack along the cliff wall, a path barely visible, narrow as a man's shoulders. "They don't watch that one. Too steep, too risky." Cole nodded. "Thank you." The soldier's arm fell limp. Two Marines carried him back towards safer ground while the rest prepared to move. Cole turned to his men. "We take the hidden path, quietly, quickly, and pray the hunters don't hear us coming." The brigade pressed into the narrow crack, climbing in total silence. The fog above glowed faintly with moonlight, as though something waited beyond it. Something deadly, something final. And somewhere up there, the remaining prisoners clung to life, or to the last seconds of it. The hidden path was barely wide enough for a single boot. It climbed at a vicious angle, carved naturally into the cliff like a crack left from some ancient quake. Snow clung to the stone in thin icy sheets. One wrong shift of balance would send a man sliding into the black emptiness below. Cole led the way, pressing his body close to the rock wall. The brigade followed in tight formation, each man stepping exactly where the one before him had stepped. Frost gathered in their eyebrows. The cold bit through their gloves, but no one slowed. Halfway up, the wind shifted. A strange smell moved with it. Burned wood, old smoke, and something metallic. Ahead, the path widened into a ledge. Cole lifted a fist, signaling stop. The brigade crouched along the cliff, listening. Voices drifted down, German, low, calm, confident. Cole edged forward, stopping just at the lip of the ledge. Below him, the mountain fell away, but above, 20 feet higher, stood a small stone shelf shaped into a perfect natural lookout point. Snow had been packed into a low wall, forming a firing position. Lanterns burned faintly behind rough-cut stones, casting long shadows across the ridge. And on that perch he saw them. 3 Gebirgsjäger, mountain hunters, wrapped in white cloaks, rifles across their laps, eyes scanning the fog-covered slopes below. They were motionless, almost statuesque, their discipline chilling. These were not standard infantry. These were elite stalkers trained for high-altitude warfare. They were waiting, watching, listening, and they were guarding something behind them, a narrow gap in the stone leading toward the summit ridge. Rourke whispered behind Cole, "Are they the ones moving the prisoners?" "Maybe," Cole murmured. "Or maybe they're the ones keeping everyone else out." Another faint sound drifted toward them, a muffled cry, a voice, weak, human. The prisoners were close. Cole's jaw tightened. "We take the perch." The brigade formed up silently. Cole pointed to 2 men on the right. "Angle around, approach from the flank." Then to another pair, "Cover from below." And finally to Rourke, "On me." They climbed the final stretch slowly, silently. Snow trickled off the cliff with each of their movements. The hunters above didn't notice, too focused on the valley. When Cole reached the foot of the perch, he waited for the others to settle into their positions. His breath fogged in the icy air. His fingers tightened around his knife. He rose. The first German turned at the faint crunch of snow, but too late. Cole slammed into him, driving him down hard onto the frozen rock. The man gasped as Cole's forearm locked around his throat. Another brigadier struck the second hunter with the butt of his rifle, sending him rolling into the snow. The third German leapt to his feet, drawing a pistol. Rourke fired once. The shot cracked across the ridge, echoing into fog. Silence followed. Cole exhaled, shaking off the tension. "Check the gap," he ordered. One Marine ducked through the stone slit and called back immediately, voice low but urgent. "Tracks! Blood! Someone was dragged through here." Cole stepped into the passage. It was narrow but walkable, just wide enough for a man carrying another over his shoulder. Footprints led upward toward a faint glow of moonlight at the summit ridge. Before he moved, Cole froze. A single rope ran along the ground. Half buried in snow, stretched tight across the path. A tripwire. But unlike the others, this one didn't connect to explosives. It connected to a bell, small, rusted, deliberate, a primitive alarm. "If that rings," Cole whispered, "they'll know we're coming." He gently lifted the rope, slid his boot under it, and stepped across without a sound. One by one, the brigade followed, careful as shadows. At the end of the passage, the world opened. The summit ridge lay ahead, a long spine of rock illuminated by moonlight, flanked by cliffs plunging into frozen darkness. And at the center of it, barely visible through fog, a campfire, small, controlled. 3 silhouettes around it, 2 men tied to posts, prisoners. Cole's heart thudded. "Positions," he whispered. The final confrontation was about to begin. The summit ridge was a knife edge, narrow, wind-scoured, and deadly. The fog thinned just enough to reveal the silhouettes around the fire. 3 German soldiers seated calmly as if nothing on this mountain could touch them. Behind them, tied to wooden posts, 2 Americans slumped with their heads bowed. Frost clung to their uniforms. Cole raised his hand, signaling the brigade to fan out along the rocks. Every step sent tiny avalanches of snow sliding into the void. The wind cut like a blade, carrying with it the faint smell of burning pine. Rourke leaned close. "They're too relaxed." "I know," Cole whispered. They're expecting us. Cole watched the Germans. Their posture told a story, unhurried, confident, not watching the ridge, but listening, waiting for movement, for a mistake, for the prey to reveal itself. One of the Germans stood picking up a kettle from the fire. Steam rose into the cold air as he poured hot water into a tin cup. He handed it to another soldier who sipped slowly, casual, almost bored, as if this was routine. Something tightened in Cole's gut. There should be more of them. The hunters didn't work in threes, they hunted in packs. The wind shifted, and Cole heard it. A crunch, soft, behind them. He spun, shadows, moving along the ridge walls, 6, 8, maybe more. The second team, the real ambush. They were circling behind the brigade, climbing over the rocks with slow, fluid steps, their white cloaks blended with snow. Only the glint of steel betrayed them. Cole hissed, "They're flanking, spread out!" But before the brigade could reposition, a German voice called out from the campfire, loud, cutting through wind. "Amerikaner, stop fighting the mountain. Lay down your weapons." The man stepped forward, an officer wrapped in a white cloak, his face weathered and calm. In his right hand, a Luger. In his left, a whistle carved from bone. He raised it slowly. One blow, and every hidden sniper on the ridge would fire at once. Cole raised his rifle, not to shoot, but to draw the officer's eye. The German smiled faintly. "Brave, foolish. This ridge is a kill zone. You are surrounded. Your men below are freezing, and these two—" He nodded toward the prisoners. "They will die before you reach them." Cole steadied his breath. "Let them go." The officer tilted his head. "No, but they will not suffer long, unless you force them to." He raised the whistle to his lips. Rourke tensed behind Cole. "Sergeant." Cole's eyes scanned the ridge in a single sweep. Positions, angles, cover. The Germans had arranged everything for maximum advantage, but they made one mistake: the fire. Its light cast sharp shadows, perfect silhouettes of the three soldiers seated and standing. Their bodies were bright outlines against the flames, easy targets for anyone positioned in darkness. Cole whispered, "On my mark." The officer took a deep breath, preparing to blow. Cole's voice cut through the wind. "Now." 3 rifles cracked at once. The Germans by the fire dropped instantly, silhouettes collapsing into the snow. The officer jerked back, losing his grip on the whistle. It fell into the snow without a sound. For a heartbeat, the ridge went silent. Then chaos erupted. Shouts in German, boots scraping rock, muzzle flashes blinking through fog. Bullets sliced through the icy air as the hidden hunters opened fire. Snow exploded in white bursts around the brigade. Cole dove behind a boulder, returning fire toward a figure crawling along the ridge wall. Rourke's voice cut through the gunfire. "They're pushing from the right." "Hold the ridge," Cole shouted. German soldiers advanced in waves, using the wind and fog as cover. One lunged toward a brigadier with a knife, but was dropped mid-stride by a clean rifle shot. Another tried to flank from above, sliding down a stone slab, but Cole met him with a burst that sent him tumbling into the darkness below. The fire dimmed under blowing snow. Shadows danced wildly. The prisoners stirred, alive but barely. "We need to reach them," Rourke yelled. "Not yet," Cole returned. "Break the ambush first." Another German charged through the haze, firing wildly. A brigadier collided with him, the 2 men grappling dangerously close to the cliff. Cole aimed, hesitated, then fired a single shot that dropped the attacker without hitting his own man. The wind howled. Gunfire echoed across the summit. The hunters slowed, then faltered, then broke. Rourke pointed. "They're retreating." Cole rose from cover, heart pumping hard. "Advance! Secure the ridge!" Step by step, they pushed forward. driving the remaining Germans back into the swirling fog until only silence remained. Cole turned toward the fire. The prisoners, still breathing, still alive. "Get them free," he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. The worst part was over, but the mountain wasn't finished with them yet. The prisoners were still breathing, their bodies trembling from cold and exhaustion. Cole and Rourke cut the ropes fast, dragging them away from the fire while the rest of the brigade secured the ridge. The wind howled across the summit, blowing sparks into the dark like tiny dying stars. "Easy, you're safe," Cole muttered as one prisoner sagged into his arms, but the man shook his head weakly. "Not yet." Cole felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "How many more traps?" The prisoner swallowed hard. "One, below the ridge. They said, if anyone reached us, they'd light the mountain." Rourke frowned. "Light it how?" Before Cole could answer, a dull thud echoed from somewhere beneath their boots. A tremor rolled across the summit, subtle but unmistakable. Snow slid off the rocks in thin sheets. Cole's eyes widened. They planted charges under the ridge. He glanced toward the narrow approach they'd used to climb. If the Germans detonated whatever was down there, the entire summit could collapse, and everyone on it would be thrown into the ravine. Rourke knelt beside one of the freed prisoners. "Where's the detonator?" The man pointed with a shaking hand toward a slit in the rock wall, barely visible, half covered by snow. A small ventilation gap leading downward. Cole didn't hesitate. "Rourke, take the men and pull back 50 yards. If this ridge goes, you can still get them out." "What about you?" Rourke snapped. "I'm stopping the charges." Rourke clenched his jaw. "Sergeant." "That's an order." Cole slipped through the narrow gap, descending a short tunnel that opened into a cramped chamber carved beneath the summit. The air was warmer here, filled with the bitter scent of explosives and oil. Wooden crates lined the walls. Wires ran across the floor like veins. At the center of the chamber knelt a single German soldier, his back to Cole. He wore no helmet, no cloak, only a worn uniform streaked with dust. His hands worked calmly over a metal box, the detonator. Cole raised his rifle. "Stop!" The soldier froze. Slowly, he turned his head. He was older, late 40s, maybe 50, eyes hollow but sharp. He looked at Cole with neither fear nor hatred. "Too late," the German murmured. "The mountain was never meant to let you leave." Cole stepped closer, rifle steady. "Move your hands away from the box." The soldier obeyed, lifting them slowly, almost respectfully. "Your men fight well, but this ridge, it's ours. It always has been." "Not tonight," Cole said. The German's gaze drifted to a second wire on the floor, so thin it was almost invisible beneath the snow dust. A failsafe. Cole followed his eyes, and understood. If the soldier moved, he'd trigger it. If Cole fired, the impact could set it off. If anyone stepped wrong, the whole summit would go. Cole lowered his rifle slightly. "You don't have to die here." The German smiled faintly, tiredly. "But someone does." In a sudden motion, he reached, not for the detonator, but for the failsafe wire. Cole fired. The shot cracked like thunder in the small chamber. The German collapsed instantly, the wire slipping from his fingers without tension. Cole lunged forward, cutting the lead and ripping the detonator's cap free before any spark could travel. Silence fell. The mountain held. Cole exhaled long and slow. "It's done." He climbed back to the ridge where the brigade waited, prisoners huddled beneath blankets. Rourke met him halfway. "Sergeant?" Cole nodded. "Charges are disarmed. We're taking everyone home." For the first time that night, relief, quiet and fragile, settled over the men. But the way down the mountain would be long, and the Apennines were not finished with them yet. Dawn didn't rise gently over the Apennines. It bled into the sky like a wound. Pale streaks of pink and gray touched the ridge as the Devil's Brigade gathered the freed prisoners and prepared for descent. The wind had eased, but cold still gnawed at fingers and faces. No one spoke. Exhaustion hung over the men like a second uniform. Cole stood at the edge of the summit, scanning the valley below. What had been a maze of fog and shadows hours earlier now showed its true shape. Endless ravines, jagged ridges, broken trees, terrain designed to punish those who dared cross it, and they had to get 3 wounded men down it alive. Rourke joined him, tightening a scarf around his neck. Hunters are gone, pulled back into the lower forest. They'll regroup, Cole said, but they've lost the advantage. Rourke snorted. Yeah? Mountain still wants us dead. Cole didn't deny it. They began the descent in single file, moving slowly along the narrow path they'd used to reach the summit. Snow cracked under their boots. Ice shifted beneath them. Every sound echoed sharply in the morning stillness. The rescued prisoners moved stiffly, supported by 2 men each. They were alive, but only because the brigade had reached them before the mountain or the hunters finished the job. 100 yards down, a distant rifle shot cracked across the valley. The men froze, but no bullet struck, no echo followed. Warning shot. A final German message. We're still here. We're watching. Go. Cole motioned forward. Hours passed as they descended through fog thickets and icy gullies. The mountain that had tried to swallow them now felt strangely quiet, as if acknowledging defeat. Even the wind softened, carrying only the rhythmic crunch of boots and the strained breathing of wounded men. At a narrow bend, one prisoner stumbled. Rourke caught him quickly. The man managed a weak smile. You came for us, he whispered. That's what we do, Rourke replied. Further down, they passed the frozen body left as a warning the night before. The brigade paused briefly, not out of fear, but respect. Cole adjusted the man's tag, brushed snow from his face, and continued. By midday, they reached the lower forest where the trees grew thicker and the air warmed slightly. The fog had lifted, revealing long shafts of sunlight piercing between pines. For the first time, the mountain felt survivable. Not safe, just survivable. A crack of branches startled several men, but it was only the lower support team arriving to escort the wounded the rest of the way. Relief rippled through the brigade. Rourke clapped Cole on the shoulder. You did it, Sergeant. Cole shook his head. We did it. He looked back up the slope, the summit ridge now barely a dark line against the sky. Somewhere up there lay the disarmed explosives, the shattered campfire, the bodies of hunters who had stalked them all night. The mountain had tested them, tried to break them, nearly claimed them. But the brigade had walked off it together. As they moved toward the valley base, one of the wounded men limped beside Cole. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. How did you find us? He asked. Cole glanced at him, then at the long white path behind them. You screamed, he said simply. We answered. The man nodded weakly, gripping his arm for balance. By late afternoon, the entire group disappeared into the safety of the lower ravines, leaving behind the frozen summit, the traps, the silence, and the ghosts of a night they would never forget. They were battered, they were exhausted, but they were alive. And in the cold, brutal ledger of war, that was victory enough.